Hello and welcome to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omar. The Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was welcomed in Pakistan by Prime Minister Imran Khan and Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa. This was his first trip to Pakistan and comes 12 years after King Abdullah visited in 2006. A formation of JF-17 Thunderjets and F-16 fighter jets had escorted the plane of the Saudi royal after its entry into the Pakistani airspace. Now, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was given a 21-gun salute upon arrival. In a break from protocol, the Prime Minister himself drove the Crown Prince to the Prime Minister House, where a welcome ceremony was held. Now, addressing the dignitaries and the royalty there, Prime Minister Imran Khan highlighted the bond between both nations. Let's listen to what he said.
Saudi Arabia has always been a friend for Pakistan. Saudi Arabia has been a friend when Pakistan has needed friends. So Saudi Arabia has always been a friend in need.
A friend in need, calling Saudi Arabia, Prime Minister Imran Khan there, cementing the bonds between the two nations. And in a very candid moment, the Crown Prince responded just as the Prime Minister sat down. Let's listen to what he said.
Mr. Prime Minister, just I want to rest assured that just consider me in Saudi Arabia the ambassador of Pakistan, and we cannot say no to Pakistan. Whatever we can do, we will deliver that.
Thank you.
The Prime Minister also made a request during his address, how he wished that the immigration process for Pakistanis going for Hajj would be done in Pakistan for the convenience of the pilgrims. He also requested the release of 3,000 Pakistani prisoners in different Saudi jails, to which the Crown Prince announced today the release of 2,100 prisoners. Now, Pakistan's relationship with Saudi Arabia has historically been strong. The countries have worked together closely on regional and global forums, including the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Let's listen to a short clip of what the Crown Prince said in this regard.
We are very glad to be today in Pakistan, a dear country to all Saudis, from His Majesty and the youngest Saudi in Saudi Arabia. We've been a brotherly country and friendly country to Pakistan, and we've worked together in tough and good times, and we will continue the same thing, especially that Pakistan facing really great future today with a great leadership.
The Crown Prince sees a great future for Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia has largely helped Pakistan financially, while Pakistan, a nuclear-armed country, has lent its support, its military support on the security front several times to Saudi Arabia. Pakistan also provides a lot of labor to Saudi Arabia. Currently, there are 2.5 million Pakistanis working there, sending back some $5 to $6 billion in remittance. Now, the former Saudi intelligence chief, Prince Turki bin Faisal, once described this relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia as probably one of the closest relationships in the world between any two countries. Now, on the first day of the visit, there was a signing of 7 memorandums of understandings worth $20 billion. These were signed in the fields of oil refinery, petrochemicals, power generation, renewable energy, and mineral resources. Let's hear what the Crown Prince had to say about these memorandums of understanding.
Today we signed MOUs. We believe it's the amount of that kind of investment is $20 billion US. It's big for phase 1, and definitely it's gonna grow every month, every year.
This is not the first time that financial and economic setups are orchestrated between these two countries. There have been the presence of various companies with 50% Saudi ownership shares operating inside Pakistan as ventures of goodwill between the two. And now we are seeing more being invested in industries such as commerce, agriculture, and leasing. So the trade volume between the two is also to the tune of $3.6 billion. And there are various things that Pakistan supplies in terms of exports to Saudi Arabia. But before we get into all of these details of what the relationship stands at historically and in the context of trade and economics, and also what does the Crown Prince's visit means, his first to Pakistan since he became Crown Prince in 2017. For all of that and more, we will be talking to our guests today. I would like to welcome Mr. Khalid Al Maina, the editor of Arab News. He's joining us here from Jeddah. Welcome to Newswire. How do you see this development? It is the first visit of the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to Pakistan, and what do you think it indicates in terms of their relations?
Well, I think this is part of a series of visits which have been done before with the leaders of Pakistan. For Saudis, Pakistan is a very important country, an ally, partner, and therefore this is a series of meetings. Most of the kings of Pakistan, of Saudi Arabia, have visited Pakistan, and Pakistani leaders, whether they were generals or prime ministers, elected or not elected, also have been to Saudi Arabia. So I think this is a good step. The Crown Prince is now looking towards the east. He wants to have strategic partnership and to see to it that the countries of the region also become part of the development platform. Because if you have good economic development around you, that eases tension and lessens any acts of violence or extremism.
Yes, there's been a lot of criticism, especially from the West, in terms of the Middle East being fragmented, the Muslim countries, the Islamic countries not holding a united front. How do you see this visit maybe addressing some of those criticisms?
Yes, I do agree. Some of them are facts, because the Arab world is a fractured world. It has almost been disintegrated through its own problems and through external influences. The Crown Prince is trying to mend fences. He's moving around. He's trying to see to it that whatever prosperity is there in the region is shared by the neighbors also. So in that respect, I think this is a good step. I also think it's a good step for us to diversify our strategic partnerships with others, so you will not be dependent on one entity or one country, and the others too will not be dependent. So in that context, I think what has happened is something that is very heartwarming, and especially the body language between the two, Imran Khan and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has been very positive and has been observed by all.
Yes, we did see footage, and we'll be playing that through our show as well, of the Prime Minister driving the Crown Prince to the Prime Minister House, where a big ceremony took place, not just for the memorandums of understanding to be signed, but also as a welcome gesture. Just talking about the economic side of this relationship, historically, they have been close ties, not just on the diplomatic front. Just talking about the trade volume on an annual basis, we're talking to the tune of $3.6 billion US between the two countries. And with more investment through this latest trip, we're seeing more development coming in the oil refinery sector. Now, this is something that obviously has been on the cards for a while. Can you shed some light on these projects that are being talked about, on which these MOUs have been signed?
This is part of the greater scheme of things to come to diversify the Saudi oil sector, to have oil stations abroad and within the area. Strategically, it makes sense also, and it also helps to have the byproducts of oil filtered down to other countries, which are buying countries. So I think economically, it is a sound move by Saudi Arabia. It is also a sound move for Pakistan to accept this, because it will create more jobs. It will also, there will be a value added in terms of, industry, in terms of research, because oil as a product is oil, but the byproducts and new things that are coming up. So if the Pakistani scientists and others make good use of it, then I think the benefits are for everyone.
Yes, and this wouldn't be unprecedented, or would it be, considering there have been joint ventures of business, whether they were in agriculture, leasing and investment, that have taken place in Pakistan, where 50% ownership was with Saudi businessmen. So would you say this is heading towards, like, it's a progress, or we're just continuing something that we have been, that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have been part of?
Well, it's a continuation, that's one, but it's progress too. But at the same time, let me be very frank, I think from the Pakistan side, there should be more evidence of seriousness of these captains of business and industry in Pakistan being more aggressive and try to sort of put their country and their industries in front. Come to Saudi Arabia, explain what they have. Pakistan is a developed country in many ways, but a lot of people here don't know about the might of the Pakistani industrial sector. So it's important, like other countries in Asia and Southeast Asia, send delegations and come. I think the Pakistanis also have to really come up. And here, it's not only the bureaucrats that have to be in touch. I think also Pakistani businessmen should look and view Saudi Arabia in a different concept and a different light.
And it's interesting you mentioned that we've seen the Crown Prince bring a lot of changes in Saudi Arabia with his vision of a progressive, advanced, ambitious Saudi Arabia. By 2030, he has some plans. Does he find confidence in the new Pakistan government, or sees their point of views or their visions aligned in a way that we're seeing this development? Or reaching out to Muslim countries is also part of his new agenda for Saudi Arabia?
Well, yes, part of it is that, but the other part is also there is a whiff of fresh air coming in the region. So he is a man who has done so many. I've said it before. I critique domestic and foreign policy. But let me tell you one thing. What changes that have happened in the last 2.5 years are humongous. I couldn't imagine. I'm not talking about entertainment. I'm talking about the young people, and especially the Crown Prince has a of those who are under 35 who would like to participate in nation buildings. Things are happening so much. Women coming in the forefront, chairpersons of banks, deputy ministers elsewhere. And these are not cosmetics. It is, I think the Crown Prince sincerely believes that if they will not change now, they will be in the backwaters. And for Saudi Arabia to seize the moment, remember one thing, that the oil prices are going down dangerously low. If we don't diversify, if we don't create human value and knowledge-based economy, I think that all the countries in the area are doomed. And that's why the Crown Prince is in a hurry. And I think it's a great thing for people around.
Hold on to that thought, Mr. Khalid. Let me get back to you. I'd like to welcome Mr. Hasham bin Saddique. He is the former ambassador to Saudi Arabia. He's been speaking to us from Islamabad. Mr. Hasham, welcome to Newswire. Let me ask you, how did you see the event unfold? The Crown Prince has left now for the remaining part of his journey. He's left Pakistan. What is your understanding of how the event developed?
I think the visit has gone exceptionally well. As you understand, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have enjoyed historic relations based on commonality of views and affinity for each other. And I think the relations needed to be more diverse and robust. And this visit has paved the way for exactly doing that. In particular, the economic cooperation between the two countries is set to rise to a level which is unprecedented. As you may know, that both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are following development plans, Pakistan in terms of CPEC and Saudi under Vision 2030. So both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are natural partners in development, having exceptional strategic relations. Similarly, the cultural affinity between the two countries and people-to-people contacts are also set to rise. So I think all in all, our relations between the two countries will scale unprecedented heights under the two governments now.
We're also seeing the Crown Prince introduce a new reform Saudi Arabia. He's looking to change what Saudi Arabia is known as, that image, and also the way life goes on there in terms of women rights and other issues. Now, this vision is part of his Vision 2030. How does Pakistan fit into the Crown Prince's vision?
I think it goes to the visionary leadership of His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, to see that Saudi Arabia is transformed not only economically, but also in socio-cultural. As I said earlier, both Pakistan and Saudi brethren have commonality of faith, they have congruence of ideas, and they share their cultural values. And I think in a transformed Saudi Arabia, with more openness, with more empowerment of women and all segments of society, I think both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia stand to benefit from each other's experience, and I'm sure the people-to-people contact between the two countries will increase, and so will the social aspects of it. During the last year, we premiered 2 movies in Riyadh, and there were a number of concerts which were held in Riyadh, including Rahat Ali Khan, and I'm sure these socio-cultural and exchanges between the two countries are set to increase, and the credit must go to the visionary leadership of His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, for transforming Saudi Arabia.
Okay, Mr. Khalid, here's another question. So let's talk a little more on the international policy. There are a lot of events taking place. We're talking about Afghanistan, we're talking about Kashmir. Could you shed some light on how Saudi Arabia, where it stands on its foreign policy, and where does it stand with Pakistan regarding these two countries?
Well, the publicized policy of Saudi Arabia is non-interference in the affairs of other countries. Now, with Afghanistan, since we have been there for years, I think it's important that not to exaggerate our control or our influence in Afghanistan. I always get asked this question. It is not that if somebody would just pick up the phone and tell the Taliban to go home. Afghanistan also has its own internal problems. And I think if the Afghanis do not in any way get to terms, it's useless. I mean, they've come here 3 times, right from the time of King Abdullah, King Fahd before him, and they've pledged, they've been into the Kaaba, they've been into Makkah, they swore to maintain peace, and when they go back, they're at each other's throats, grappling with each other. So that, I think, is important, that nobody from outside, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, the USA, or India, can come up and tell them. I think initially it has to come in from their hearts, and to see that the interest of Afghanistan, it should be that of peace and prosperity and the wellness of its own people. Now, regarding Kashmir, I think we have always subscribed to the view that there should be peace and there should be negotiations between both countries. Any struggle or any tension between both countries is detrimental to the future of a strong South Asia. For us, it's very important that this be a country free from any wars, any conflicts. And I hope that both sides, saner elements will prevail. I'm happy that the Pakistanis have been very much forthright, and Imran Khan, who, by the way, is also a very popular figure in India, on the cricket pitch and outside the cricket pitch, can be able to do ahead. But we do also hope that in India also the outstretched hand will come in, because the people of Kashmir deserve peace. But as I said, there has to be negotiations. There has to, on other issues, the Indus water, the other things, sharing of the rivers, trade, these kind of things should be there.
So, Mr. Khalid, just as we run out of time, last question to you. I'm glad you mentioned India here. The Crown Prince is then going to leave for India for a visit there. He signed MOUs of projects around $20 billion there. It's expected to the tune of 46 or 40 plus $billion. This is the first major figure from the royal family from Saudi Arabia visiting since 2006. It's obviously a big deal. Saudi Arabia has a big place in Pakistan, in the people's hearts, and we see them as friends. And this is something we have seen in the introduction, the speech that took place in the Prime Minister House between the two premiers, where they talked about how they see each other. So just moving forward, do we see that maybe international issues where India and Pakistan have been have a lot of sticking points and so their trade struggles, do we see maybe the Crown Prince addressing some of these issues, maybe addressing the topic of Kashmir when he goes to India?
No, I don't know. I'm not privy to what they will discuss, but all I'm trying to say is, yes, the Indians might bring that subject up. They might bring cross-border aggression, stuff like that. And I think the Crown Prince will try to pacify both sides. But in those areas are a bit off course for the Crown Prince. Mainly, I think it has to focus on the people in the subcontinent. The fight of India and Pakistan should be against hunger, deprivation ill health and lack of resources. And that's what we, if asked, can help. But I don't think so that we can tell them to do this or that in Kashmir or internally or externally. But I'm sure these topics will be broached. The topic of peace within the subcontinent, I'm sure, will be talked about.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Khalid. So, Mr. Hasham, how do we see this development in terms of how things have been since 2006, when the last time any royalty from Saudi Arabia visited Pakistan? This is King Abdullah I'm talking about. It's been a long time. Do you see that an uptick on the relations developing between the two countries?
Absolutely. As I said earlier as well, I think the relations between the two countries are destined to rise to an unprecedented levels. And the credit must go to the governments and the leadership of the two countries who are overseeing a transformation in our relations and scaling new heights. I think both the leadership are highly dynamic and doers. And inshallah, I hope to see not only the relations between the two countries set to rise, but I think the development will be concurrent and will be mutually beneficial for each other.
Okay, and as we've seen in the MOU, some of the details that we have, we've seen an $8 billion commitment or basically an investment in the Gwadar port, for an oil refinery. Could you explain to us a little bit of the significance of this project in particular in eyes of Saudi Arabia?
I think signing of MOU for setting up a refinery in Gwadar is extremely important from Pakistan's standpoint. Pakistan spends close to $20 billion for import of crude and POL products, and a large amount is spent on POL projects because our refining capacity, national refining capacity, is woefully inadequate. So therefore, I think setting up of a refinery of nearly 300,000 barrels per day capacity will go a long way in addressing this our strategic inadequacy in our economic setup. And with Gwadar and CPEC coming up, and a large refinery and subsequently, inshallah, a petrochemical complex, I think it will add to geostrategic significance of not only Pakistan, but in particular Gwadar. Pakistan has been pursuing refinery project with a number of countries, and last serious negotiations with Saudi Arabia were held in 2016, and subsequently it kept following. And finally, we're grateful to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for fulfilling this inadequacy, which will go a long way in development of Balochistan in general,
right. And how do you see the remaining leg of his journey? This is a pretty long tour. The first stop was Pakistan. He's headed to India, and then from there China, Indonesia, and other countries. So how do you see this at a time where relations between Pakistan and India are already quite tense?
I think Saudi Arabia is one of the leading countries in the world, and they have far-reaching relations with all countries. What we need to concentrate is on our relations with Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have stood by each other in all global and regional forums, especially during the testing time. And I'm sure our bond is strong, enduring, and robust.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Hasham, for your input there. And with that, we're going to take a quick short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'd like to welcome Mr. Mohammad Al Qubiban, a political analyst who is joining us from Riyadh. Mr. Mohammad, let me get your take on this development. The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has just left from Pakistan and headed for the rest of his journey. $20 billion was worth of MOUs were signed in 7 different fields. How do you see this development, especially in light of Saudi-Pakistan relations?
Thank you for having me, Madam. And I think that we will consider this as an extension of the strong relationship between the two countries. That's number one. Number two, Pakistan is, as you know and others know, is a quite strong friend country. Not only a strong friend country, is more than this. There will be, let's say, the relationship between the two countries goes back to maybe 7 decades before. And what Prince Mohammed are doing right now is he is continuing the relations between, improving the relation between the two countries. Now, the way I look at it, I see some transfer objectives of the visits. Before, you knew the stress, or let's say the tension in the area. So the relation between the two countries mainly were focusing in military issues and visa with a little of laborers coming in Saudi. They are not little, but the track they are taking is only focusing on the labor. Now, as you said, ma'am, the transfer is allocated now toward the economic. So $20 billion with or a contract, not a contract, let's say memorandum and agreement between the two countries, where I think it's a message, it's a pass a message to the whole world. The two countries are really working real hard in stability in the region, working real hard in development between the two countries. And let's not forget, Pakistan, I've been there 1 year, by the way. I studied in National Defense University in 07 for 1 year. So I knew the relation between the two countries very well. But with the shift that Prince Mohammed are taking with the Prime Minister, Mr. Khan, I think this is a message to the whole world that the Saudis, the Pakistanis, is not only allied because of the problems regarding war against terror or against drugs or against some little issues coming between the two countries. And that's what we are looking for. I am definitely sure that the Saudis government, led by King Salman and his deputy Prince Mohammed, were looking for a result and follow-up from the two countries. By the way, I think they initiated or they re-established a council between the two countries to follow up such an important agreement.
Right, and now Pakistan's, sorry to cut you there, but so far what we understand from the $3.6 billion of trade volume that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have between themselves, Pakistan supplies a lot of rice, meat products and fruit, home textile products, chemicals, and on the other hand, the imports from Saudi Arabia are mostly of oil products. And now we're seeing, from just reflecting on the MOUs, is a lot of interest in minerals and a lot of interest in agriculture, and especially the oil refinery in Gwadar. What can we make of this sort of change in industries that Saudi Arabia is showing interest in, investment?
This is what I'm saying, is the Saudis with the new vision of 2030 are looking for, especially in the economic wise, we have to diversify or looking for different than the oil. And that's one of the steps planned to start with. You knew the Pakistanis have almost how many rivers you have. The agriculture there is good. And even though I think your country, especially Lahore, is famous with the leather. And also the important things is the industrial. What I mean by the industrials, you know, ma'am, I met so many Pakistani friends back in England, and I was talking to them. How about if you have the chance to shift from England and work in Saudi Arabia with half pay you have? They are willing. What I loved about Pakistan people and your government is they are willing to step forward. The Saudis, let's say, they move one step forward, the Pakistani government moved double or triple steps. So what I'm trying to pass here, ma'am, is the two countries are looking for varieties of investment and enough on the oil or enough of that labors, though the labors are transferring about how many? 4.5 billion US dollars a year, but I don't think so this is enough for Pakistan. Pakistan is facing a lots of challenges. We knew the tensions recently, unfortunately, between the Indians and the Pakistanis. We knew what the Iranians try to do and work hard to fail the relationship between this.
Let me welcome our new guest here, Mr. Shahid Karimullah. He is also a former ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Is joining us from Karachi. Welcome to the show, Mr. Shahid. We're just talking about how the relationship between Pakistan and India is at a very critical period, and how is this being seen when the Crown Prince comes to Pakistan and moving on to India. Do you feel like the Crown Prince will have some weightage or influence in issues that have been a sticking point between both neighboring countries, especially Kashmir?
Well, with my experience, I would say that this issue between Pakistan and India has already been touched upon by the Crown Prince, and he said that we would like to see good friendship between India and Pakistan. And as regard the Kashmir issue is concerned, because of the relations between Saudi Arabia and India, which on business point of view are quite large, and they also, the Indians working in the Saudi Arabia, they have the expatriate, the largest community of expatriate is Indians. So in that way, Crown Prince will certainly be very, very careful in giving his statements.
And so if we are to reflect on the event that took place in the past 2 days, his arriving here, the signing of those 7 MOUs of $20 billion, is this something we can see historically in an expected event, or would you see it an unprecedented development between the two nations?
I have been ambassador in Pakistan, ambassador to Saudi Arabia, right? And I spent 3 years there. Then also the relations were very warm and very encouraging. But this time when I've been watching on the TV, I've been a part of reception when in the past also Crown Prince Fahad or Khalid, somebody had come. Then I was Chief of Naval Staff. I had received them. But this time, there's a lot of difference. The main difference that I see from the past is the body language. The body language between the Crown Prince and Imran Khan. I mean, this was something which was unique. I have never seen in my diplomatic career or in my service career such a body language. It was so positive, it was so warm, it was so frank that I think it is unprecedented.
So it would almost seem like it was a natural alliance between the two leaders. They got along very well. Let me get your take on this, Mr. Mohammed. How did you see it? Were you able to catch any of the footage of both the leaders meeting? Could you comment on what you thought was their interaction like?
Really, this is an interesting point. Yes. If you remember, Mr. Khan has first visit to Saudi. That was in September, I think, last year. And what I saw from the Prime Minister is a willingness and eager, honestly, to strengthen the relationship. And some of the Saudis media had interviewed him. I've listened to what he was trying to say. Is really, I'm proud of the Prime Minister.
Yes, coming to you, Mr. Shahid. Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, again, reflecting a little on their historical ties. Just one of the many incidents where they have been there for each other was when Pakistan was developing its nuclear program. It looked at international isolation. It was shunned by countries across the globe, but Saudi Arabia was one country that was actually in its support.
Actually, Saudi Arabia, not only while we were developing a nuclear arsenal, Saudi Arabia has always been coming to our help, internationally, regionally, whatever you say. whatever was the case. For example, when I was ambassador there, President Musharraf visited twice. And that time also they helped Musharraf with, once I think it was a tranche of $300 million, and once it was again about $300 million twice. So economically they have been helping us whenever we were in trouble. And obviously when we exploded the nuclear bomb, they stood with us, and they have never been, we cannot complain that they have never stood with us. But this time, the statements like, I will be the Pakistan ambassador in Saudi Arabia by the Crown Prince, then saying whatever I am doing for Pakistan is nothing special, but it is my duty to do it, Farz hai mera. This sort of a statement I had never heard from Saudi Arabia ever before.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Shahid Karim, for your input. Mr. Mohammed, let me ask you for your reaction on those words that came from the Crown Prince regarding the relationship. At one point he did say that, and we played this video clip a little earlier, that I am the ambassador of Pakistan in Saudi Arabia. Is this something that is unusual for a Crown Prince to say?
Absolutely, yeah. And even that he performed or let's say he started the step one in improving and strengthening the relationship. You knew, maybe you've heard about that. There was a debate around some Pakistanis are in the Saudi jails, and he ordered that to release, I think, big number of them. Of course, they will go through the right process, but saying that I am the Pakistani ambassador in Saudi, that's what I was trying to say, is he is continuing to improve the true relationship between the two countries. I really admire that from His Royal Highness, and Pakistan country deserve more. Pakistan countries is always are supporting. You maybe remember when the Houthis fired long-range weapons toward Medina and toward Mecca. First people, they condemned this kind of hostilities. That was the Pakistanis. Religions, I think, minister or somebody who was in charge, and also the Pakistani government.
In a joint statement that came out from both leaders, one of the things that they highlighted was that how both countries are working towards in eliminating terrorism around the world. And of course, the association of terrorism with both Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, this is something that both have suffered as an image crisis and association. How do you see them working together in eliminating this problem?
This is another important point. You knew unfortunately the Saudis government and the Pakistani government being accused from the international community that we are the cause of this mess in the whole world. These Pakistanis, I remember that they did their best in the northern part toward Afghanistan to fight Al-Qaeda group. The Saudi people, they did their best, and I'm proud of what my country did regarding or against the terror people. Now, what I'm saying between the two countries, now this is an ongoing process, never stop. But by the way, the communication, the information, sharing information, exchanging military issues, exchanging very classified information between the two countries, I think both ambassadors, they did an outstanding job for, let's say that about 25 years ago, and they are working very hard. With this visit, and what we saw from Prime Minister Khan and His Royal Highness, that they are reinforcing that the two countries are major players in the region, also it's in the whole world, to fight against the terror. Now, let me get out of this matter a little bit. You saw Iran yesterday were accusing the Pakistani government are not doing enough to fight those type of terror had attacked some soldiers back in Iran. That's what always Iran and America are using. Both countries regarding Saudis and the Pakistanis are not doing enough.
Right.
And that's a fake information. That's a real fake information. What I'm saying here, the two countries are suffering from the terror groups, suffering from the drugs. By the way, this is a very important issue. But they are doing their best. With this visit, I think it will continue to put this important issues.
Right. Let me pull in Dr. Waqar Masood, the former Secretary of Finance. He's joining us from Islamabad. Welcome to Newswire. Dr. Waqar, just talking a little about the significance of the MOUs. What is the next step? What is the next phase, especially in terms of the oil refinery of $8 billion that an MOU has been signed for Gwadar?
And perhaps a turning point in our relationship with the Saudi Arabia. And they are coming at a time when the economy badly needs such gestures and such activities. The size of this first phase, as Crown Prince himself has mentioned, is $10 billion, which is a very significant amount of investment. And the sectors in which these things are coming, clearly oil and gas, power sector, and some other development projects are included. So, what are the next steps? Well, when senior leaders are meeting, there is a great deal of fanfare around such activities, but the hard part comes soon thereafter. And the hard part would be to translate them into very specific investments. And obviously, it takes time, but we cannot take our eyes off the work, which needs to be started immediately. I mean, these projects...
But Dr. Waqar, sorry to cut you here, but just to reflect on just the signing of the MOUs itself as a symbol, could this create an environment conducive for foreign investment within Pakistan?
Well, it will spur investment both from outside as well as in Pakistan, and hence we must make sure that they are translated into actual physical work, and that depends on a great deal of preparation, engineering studies, pre-feasibility studies, and many environmental studies that have to be undertaken before the project takes off the ground. So all I'm emphasizing is that it's definitely a huge leap forward, but the work has just begun. We need to let our eyes constantly be engaged in the development of these projects so that they become reality.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Waqar. Coming to you, Mr. Mohammed, we were talking about how there is the problem of fake news in the image maligning of countries. One of the things that came up during this meeting between the Crown Prince and Prime Minister Imran Khan was also in terms of this very issue, how both countries could communicate better and work towards making a better image. They referred to not just the visit to India, but also the Afghan refugee problem, and also the Taliban talks that are going to happen. Do you see that maybe the criticism towards Pakistan and Saudi Arabia is more from the West because of the possibility of joining together to have a more important role in the region?
This is one of the reasons. They do want the two countries to be as strong as they are now. Okay, so this is one thing. The other thing is, the Pakistanis and the Saudis have very tremendous relationship where it's scared the West, where it's scared the enemies of the two countries. We're talking about the exchange of information. We're talking about military sharing the exercises together. We're talking about the Gwadar port, one of the strategic ports in the whole world. The Iranians, I think they built somewhere around 400 kilometers in their border, a port like so, that they want to collapse the Pakistanis' economy. Today visits Prince Mohammed, it's to reinforce that the Saudis will stand next to the Pakistanis regardless with whatever is happening. The Americans says whatever they like.
Will stand next to the Pakistanis no matter what happens. An important point indeed, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you so much for your contribution here on Newswire. That's going to be our cue to take a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Newswire. Now, in The Hague, the International Court of Justice has begun its hearing. It's going to be a 4-day hearing as Pakistan and India both gave their statements. The issue, of course, is the arrest of Kulbhushan Jadhav, and the case is his consular access. Right now, the head of the Indian legal team has given statements in front of the 15-member bench, I believe, of judges, as one of them was taken ill, which was the former Supreme High Court judge of Pakistan. But anyway, moving on, what are the developments? How far are they going to make their case today? We'll find out more. But first, let me welcome our guests. I want to welcome Major General Ijaz Awan, a defense analyst who will be joining us, as well as Mr. Shayan Ahmed Khan. He's a researcher for the Research Society of International Law. Let me start with you, Major General Ijaz. How do you see the developments unfolding right now? The legal team of India continues to say it is an egregious violation of the Vienna Convention. Do you agree with that statement with them? Do they have any weightage on that statement?
Well, I think the case is sub judice, and I'll not be able to comment much, but there are 3-4 things that are very clearly visible. One, that Pakistan has agreed and they have allowed the case to go to the International Court of Justice. But Indian prayer is not acceptable on 3 grounds. One, they are saying the needs of justice are not being met, the consular access is not being given, therefore and he was kidnapped from Iran. So the person must be handed back to India. Now, against this, Pakistan's stand is entirely different. Number one, that if he is Kulbhushan Jadhav, who is now identified as Kulbhushan Jadhav, why was he carrying an Indian official passport with the name of Hussain Mubarak Patel? Now, when the Indian government gives him a passport with a false identity and false identity card, and on that basis, the case is very weak. Why should a person who is a legitimate and bona fide traveler should travel under a false identity? Now, this is very clear that this was a case of spying, and his confession reinforces this perception of Pakistan and stand of Pakistan when we say he is a raw agent who is an agent handler and was in Pakistan, and he has traveled on this passport 17 times. Right. It's not one-time travel on this passport.
So the issue is that the issue that really comes in is his name, right? That the passport that was issued, why was it issued in another name?
Yes. So this is a cover name in the intelligence language.
So that means,
does that mean? This is a cover name which was given to him, and he was a different person traveling for different reasons.
Let me ask Mr. let me come back to you. I'm sorry, Major General. Let me come to you, Mr. Shayan. In terms of international law, what does it say, especially since there was also an agreement between Pakistan and India in 2008 regarding this specific, such a situation where consular access, when will it be denied and when will it be allowed? Does Jadhav qualify for access or based on that agreement?
So if we are to base our analysis just on the agreement and all alone, the 2008 agreement in clause 6 specifically excludes consular access if and when the states require to do so in terms of national security. However, provided in the essence, even though it's a bilateral agreement that has been affirmed by both the countries on multiple occasions, provided, or for the sake of argument, that is not accepted by the court as being valid and not being in compliance with the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, then the argument then falls to Article 36 of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. So India is saying that the obligations relating to consular access are in such a way that they can be liable to no exceptions.
Okay, if you were to break it down very quickly, since we've got the last minute left, just based on these agreements, the Vienna Convention and what was agreed between Pakistan and India, the fact that his identity is in question, he was not declared as his original name but as a pseudonym, does that mean he can be given consular access or not?
So any national, if a state is asserting that he is a particular national, so then he deserves consular access. But my point initially was as well that Article 36 can be made subject to exceptions because the UN Charter protects a state's political integrity. So if and when that state's political integrity is violated, then no treaty that has been passed after the charter, whether it's the VCCR or any other treaty, could have envisaged.
No, you've answered my question, Mr. Shayan. You've answered that quickly. Well, last question to you, Major General Ijaz Awan. Now, having heard this, India's legal team has also stated one other thing in its statements, that this is a propaganda tool that Pakistan has used. They could have made it a very simple, this could have been a simpler solution to it than bringing it to this point. Do you agree with that? Why would Pakistan use it as a propaganda tool, according to India?
Well, Pakistan does not have to use it as a propaganda tool. It is their choice, and they have asked to take the case to International Court of Justice. And the other three things are, number one, that he will be given a consular access according to the law of the land. And once his appeal is turned down by the Chief of Army Staff, like all Pakistani soldiers and all Pakistanis, his case, he has the right to go to the High Court of Pakistan and appeal against this decision. And even if the High Court upholds the decision of the military court, he has got yet another door to knock at, and that's the President of Pakistan. He can ask for the mercy appeal from the President of Pakistan, and then only the punishment would be he would be executed, or the punishment would be given to him that is given by the three courts. So all three have got the right to change the decision of the military court, and that is where the justice and consular access will not be denied to him.
Okay, so consular will not be denied to him. It's very clear and laid out in all the laws, especially the law of the land, where this applies in Pakistan. And while the hearing takes place in the ICJ in The Hague, in the Netherlands, we will keep you up to date. Keep watching Indus News. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. And with that, I'll have to say goodbye. Till next time. See you next time.